All right, here we go. OverDrive, off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, Jamie Noodles, McLennan, Dave Feschuk of the Toronto Star in here.
What's going on today?
What's happening? How are we feeling this afternoon?
Feel like the weather's broken, which is good.
Beautiful outside, loving it.
Starting to get some snow that melts. So the frustrating thing is your car gets dirty and you're using up all your windshield wiper fluid. But outside of that, I'll take it because it was ugly. What was it, last week?
Oh, yeah.
Ugh.
It's beautiful out there. Beautiful.
I'll tell you what, I'm glad that it's warmed up because Toronto has decided we actually don't move snowdrifts anymore. We just let them sit there.
Yeah,
And
that's
melt.
our plan.
That's the plan.
Just dump it
Let
over
'em
there.
melt.
Dump it over there, and it'll melt at some point.
Couple months, it'll be gone.
Yeah.
Were you on the 401 today and experienced that? Because the 401 was at a standstill because there was a giant gator that was moving snow from one lane over to the other.
Right.
People were just driving by watching. So I was very delayed getting to the studio today. I came down early, so I was lucky, but I was like, what the hell are they doing? And they were moving snow around.
Yeah. Why are we moving it? Like, once it's been moved off the highway, I don't know why we have to move it again.
I don't know. They were trying to clear maybe that shoulder lane or something, but it was gridlock by Yorkdale. Like gridlock.
Yeah, it's bedlam out there, man. It is bedlam. Like that. It was a lot of snow, but it's not like we're in South Carolina here and we don't know how to handle it. You would think we'd have a pretty good idea now.
Apparently.
The city's been around for a while, and yet we'll let the sun figure that out for us, right?
Yes,
warm up a little bit, get the sun out, and everything's going to be all good. And it's going to be a fun one tonight because the Leafs have the Bruins in Boston. The Celtics are in town. You got Luka at home against the Mavs tonight.
Man, oh man.
I'm jacked for that because I wish it was in Dallas. I would prefer that's the one you really circle when Luka goes back there. But I've noticed Maverick fans online have noticed that like Nico Harrison, their GM, doesn't really show his face when they're playing home games, but he is on the road a lot.
Oh, really?
So when they're on the road, because you know this, Dave, it's very unique to the NBA. GMs will sit in the stands on the road in the NBA.
In seats.
Yeah, they're in seats. It's the only sport I can think of that does that.
That is weird.
Yeah. Every other sport, you're up in a luxury suite
box
or luxury box or whatever. In the NBA, they will sit in the seats.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a booze bag right next to you with a beer and popcorn.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, all the time.
All the time.
That is... I feel like I know this, and I should know this, but it just now it makes sense. But I don't know why that would happen. Why would the opposing team not just go, "Here's a suite for management," and go sit there?
Like that's what they do.
They do that in the NHL.
The NHL, they do it in the NFL. You've got your own. Usually, the owner has a suite, and there's other people up there if need be. And
I mean, I guess the answer, Noodles, would be the proximity to the court in the NBA.
Right.
Is seen as a scouting advantage. Right, the scouts sit courtside. The management wants to sit closer because it's like hockey's a bird's eye game. You could watch it from the press box, feel like you're getting a good feeling of who's playing well. The NBA is more of let's get down to the court level, see who's actually working out there.
I guess. I mean, if you can't sit in a box and figure out on your team who's working and who's not, and taking a peek at the monitor, then maybe I don't know. I think that's very strange. Because you're opening yourself up for security incidents.
Well, and we're talking legends. Like there are, like Larry Bird when he was an executive would just be sitting in the seats.
Oh yeah,
like Larry Bird.
You're like,
right
hey,
there.
there's Larry. Like Larry Bird is sitting there, and some guy's like, I'll take two Budweisers.
They're passing beers through him.
Larry might grab one.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Larry might be like, that's a great idea. So I think I'm curious to see if he's going to be in the seats. At crypto.com tonight in LA, which is still, I can't get over that name. It was Staples forever. It's crypto.com for the next 20 years in LA. But if he is, how are Laker fans going to react to this guy? Because they love him that he gave them Luka Doncic.
Build him a statue.
Like they love Nico Harrison.
They should carry him around like in a chair.
Right.
Just, they should be so pumped up. But he better not show his face when L.A. is in town in his own building.
But that's what I'm saying. It's his building in Dallas, and no one sees him around there, apparently, over the last 2 weeks.
And to your point, Hayes, like, if you're a Mavericks fan who's incensed that they gave away Luka, and there are many of those, as we know, the only place you can go to heckle Nico Harrison without getting kicked out of the building might be LA.
Exactly.
Might be on the road because they've been kicking people out.
Yeah.
They've been kicking people out of Dallas for heckling the GM, saying the GM should be fired, which I think is wrong.
Did I read this wrong that they were trying to encourage fans not to wear the
Yes,
Luka
that was a false report.
I think that was okay.
That was a fake
'Cause
report.
I thought about bringing it up yesterday on the show, and I'm like,
No,
I need to
that
fact
was-
check myself because I was like, you can't do that.
No, you
You cannot tell fans not to wear his jersey. He was your favorite player for years.
Well,
Right.
what they did do was they were throwing people out of the arena for saying fire Nico. And that's
tough.
That's wrong, man. Like,
Yeah, that's
free
wrong.
speech.
You're really asking for trouble, man. You start doing that kind of stuff.
It's the stupid.
You just got to let it blow over. You made the
Exactly.
deal.
We see it all the time. Was it Ottawa that didn't want to sell to the Leafs?
Yep.
Fans. You got to stop that. Just let it all unfold. Let people have this free speech unless they cross a line. Then
That's
I get
different.
it.
Yeah.
There is a line, and everybody knows it for the most part. But I think it's ridiculous. I still think in Dallas they're going to have a what storm on their hands when Luka goes in. And what if he puts up 40 against the Mavs?
Oh, and he
he's
likely
gonna be
will.
Motivated.
I think he goes off tonight. I fully expect he goes off tonight. I think it's going to be a great show.
The over-under is like 32.5.
It's a big number for him tonight. And he looked great the other night in Denver. Like playing the Nuggets, he looked really good. He put up big numbers. And, it's been a godsend for the NBA because they just went through a rough patch with what's going on with the All-Star game.
Yeah.
And, the trade deadline was pretty crazy. And we just saw Phoenix roll through town. It's wild. Like Kevin Durant, the Suns they just look dead in the water. And then Wemby's out for the year with an injury. And yet, this is probably, you couldn't script it any better if you're Adam Silver. Like, prop up the Lakers, prop up LeBron. No one's talking about Bronny anymore.
Right.
And let Luka and LeBron and JJ Redick, to his credit, he's done a pretty good job there.
Pretty good.
Like,
Yeah.
he's done a pretty good job. And, the question is, can that team defend enough? Because Luka is so awful defensively.
Yeah.
And he just gets attacked. And when he struggled early in his Lakers career, that's generally been the problem. But they're probably going to be a 3 or a 4 seed in the West. LeBron looks good. If Luka looks comfortable and they go on a run, you couldn't ask for anything better if you're the NBA.
That's what it is. The timing of it. If they go on a run because it all comes together at the right point, that's massive. That's a trade of the century.
Exactly. Who cares about the All-Star weekend being a joke?
That's far gone. If LA, one of the marquee teams in the league, like
the marquee for the NBA.
What do you think, Dave? Do you think that there was not collusion, but like the fact that it just goes Dallas to LA and there's other GMs or, whispers out there going, we would have given more for Luka.
Yeah.
Like, do you think there was something to that?
Well, there's something that there was a relationship between the
Right.
executives, right? Pelinka and Nico Harrison go back a long way.
Right.
And there was obviously massive discontent with Luka within the Dallas organization.
Yeah.
And they hated the guy.
Which is wild.
It is pretty wild. It does make you wonder, like, what's going on there.
Yeah.
Like, it really
Yeah.
does. Yes, he's uber talented. Yes, he puts up crazy numbers. But how could it get to a point where the organization convinced the owner as well, who's not in the trenches,
Right.
to relinquish that talent
Yeah.
and make it make sense?
In the prime of his career.
Not even necessarily
Yeah, like
yet.
technically, yeah, wait,
Like, he's 25 years old, and he's been a 5-time All-NBA player. And they said, get him out of here for street clothes. And the guy, he's already in street clothes
Street
for the
clothes
next month.
in street clothes.
It's crazy. So,
I mean, it's scary.
yeah,
It is.
It is.
It's the guy gets a decent nutritionist and changes the light beer, and it could get really scary.
It is
Really
pretty
scary.
wild, though, when you look at Luka. Like, he really does he looks out of shape, and he's just out there running up and down the court, yet he's such a good player. And if he does figure it out, then that obviously is very concerning for the rest of the NBA. So we got that going on. And again, Toronto, Boston, and the Leafs are in Boston playing the Bruins tonight. I'm seeing John Tavares, I guess, was speaking with the media about his contract situation.
Oh, yeah?
And just, reiterating that he'd like to get something done, wants to remain with the Leafs,
Great.
which is
Talk to
great.
you in
That's
July.
admirable. And I will say this, though. If I'm John, he's a smart guy. John Tavares is a smart guy. And listen, everyone's got a different opinion on the contract, on the tenure, the fact that they haven't won, all that kind of stuff. John Tavares has been a consummate professional as a Maple Leaf, and he plays every night, and he puts forth an effort, and he produces. Has it been worth $11 million every single game? No, but that applies to everyone. Everyone's got off nights. Everyone's got down years. When this guy gets through 7 years, you'll look back and say, on average, it would be like 34 goals a year and 77 points. That's a really good player.
Full value.
Full value. He has brought everything he could bring to the table, within reason. And obviously, you'd like to look back and realize, okay, there's another win here or there or more playoff success. He's not alone in that, though. They all have to own that. But I think what John understands, and I think he'd be smart to understand this, it really behooves him to sign before they get to the playoffs. Because if they lose again in the first round, I think he realizes I'm in big trouble.
Just based on breaking the band.
Based on the reaction this market's going to have.
Right.
I can tell you what the market's going to be. If let's say they lose in the first round.
Yeah.
Game 6, Game 7, we go through it again, hello darkness, my old friend. Immediately it's going to be, let him go, get out, we can't do this anymore, let Tavares go, let Marner go. And that doesn't mean the Leafs will act on that.
No.
Again, I should clarify, the Leafs may view it differently because they always have. They've always been much more patient, and their approach has been very consistent. They believe in them, and nothing has changed that in the past. I have no reason to believe it'll change it this year. It might, but I have no reason to. But what I'm saying is the market and the viewpoint of it.
The fan base, and people outside the curtain.
John signed an extension today. It'd be a polarizing reaction depending on what the number is and the term and all that. But right now, everyone's there's a malaise, dog days. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, John Tavares sticking around. That's cool. He's having a great year.
Yeah.
You try to work out a contract after the playoffs if it goes sour again. The reaction is just going to be, it's going to be so much louder and more negative. And I think Tavares is well aware of that.
Which is fair, but he's taking care of his part. And like you say, 7 years in, he's still productive. He's still a great pro. The captaincy goes to Austin. He's still just dug in, and he's not skating over his lip every night. You don't see him pouting. You don't see him being a bad teammate or anything. If anything, he's just done his job and been fantastic. It doesn't matter. It's an $11 million cap hit, and the Leafs, Marner's a different situation because he is in his prime, and he controls his future with the no-trade clause and everything. With John Tavares and Mitch Marner, because I'll lump them both together, it's probably at this point better served to let this all play out. Mitch Marner's going to get a boatload of money, regardless if it's in Toronto or with somebody else. It's just it's a matter of if it's an 8-year deal or a 7-year deal, and what does that number look like? So you can kick the can down the road. Same thing with John Tavares. Somebody's going to sign him next year.
Yeah, of course. He's playing in the league.
But here's the thing. $22 million could come off the books, right? And if things don't go well, you can reshape very quickly. We were talking about it in the green room an hour ago. I'm like, Sam Bennett's available if he gets the free.
As of now, he is, yeah.
As of right now.
Mikko Rantanen.
Yeah. Like, again, these players have to choose. Mitch Marner has to choose. This is just a what-if scenario. But if Mitch Marner chooses to move on, regardless, even if they go deep in the playoffs and he's like, I just want to cash out and take my services somewhere else, you've got that cap space, and you might have John Tavares' cap space, or you do until you sign him. That's $22 million. Who would you rather have moving forward if it doesn't work out? Rantanen and Bennett, potentially, or other players, or those two players. Like that you can change on the fly very quickly, or you can acquire guys, that have term on him and use that cap space. The flexibility is what Brad Treliving and his management group have.
Yes, it's very valuable.
It is valuable.
It's incredibly valuable.
The cap going up.
Cap going up extensively.
Right. And it's valuable because you haven't had it, right? You've been locked into this group.
Right.
And, you can talk about the Leafs have been patient and wanting to bring it back. Look, in a lot of ways, they hemmed themselves into having to bring it back, right? Because various no-trade clauses kicked in. And Dubas, in his last press conference as GM a couple years ago, talked about the need for perhaps a Matthew Tkachuk type trade that could shake this group up. A Sam Bennett would qualify.
Yes.
In terms of a player who plays with that kind of reckless abandon, who's a threat on the ice, a threat that the likes of which they do not have right now.
No, they don't have that player in their stable. They don't have, but if Sam Bennett gets to free agency, I was just looking at his cap. He makes like $4.4 million right now.
What a bargain.
He's going to double that in free agency. And you might not love him in the regular season every game because he just plays a hard game. He gets banged up a little bit. But game one of the playoffs, you want him in your lineup. We saw that. Four Nations, you saw that in the playoffs last year. Ask Brad Marchand. He skated right up and punched him square in the jaw. Knocked him out of the game. Like that was a serious, it was greasy, but you want that on your team. You don't want that on, facing that. He would be a guy that is coveted by not only, the Leafs, but 30 other teams.
Oh, yeah. That's a guy that a lot of teams
Florida
are calling
want to
on.
let him go.
Well, I don't think they do. I mean, I believe he has the same agent as Marner. I believe Darren Ferris represents him. And again, generally speaking, the way that he has gone through the procedure is let's get to free agency or get close to it, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And at the same time, Florida has jumped on signing Reinhart and getting out in front of the Verhaeghe deal.
Yeah.
Obviously, they have Tkachuk and they have Barkov, and Bobrovsky's making a lot of money. They're committed to a number of guys.
Yeah.
I would think they'd still have money and they would find money, and with the cap going up, they would do what they can to keep Bennett. But as of now, he's the lone wolf down there because the other guys decided to sign. They decided they wanted to sign and get out in front of this. I think Evan Rodriguez may have signed an extension as well. Like they've kind of kept the core together. Ekblad's obviously a part of that, and so they've jumped out in front of their core and locking them up. The only guy that hasn't is Bennett, but Florida's going to do everything they can to keep him. There's no question about that.
He will be a hot commodity.
He should be. But if he hits free agency, there is going to be a ton of teams throwing a lot of money at him.
Just looking at Puckpedia right now. I did not realize this, but it's amazing to see sometimes things that fly under the radar. Ekblad is a UFA at the end of the season. Have you heard one word about Aaron Ekblad being available? Like I'm just saying.
They're not going to trade him, but you mean like in terms of his future in Florida.
That's an own rental technically because if he decides I want to leave, I'm looking at he's in year 8 of 8. So if he is a UFA making 7.5. Sam Bennett, same thing, 4.425. Year 4 of 4, 28 years old. Like that's two key pieces that helped them win a Stanley Cup last year that they're deciding, we'll let this play out and we can sort it out. But when you build a winner, you've been talking about this for years. Instead of the players going after you and squeezing every inch and money out of you, you want to play in Florida? Okay, we're going to have some money for you at the end of the season.
Yeah.
We'll work this out.
Take it or leave it.
Take it or leave it.
Yeah, take it or leave it.
That's the thing. You have to build that program where it's so attractive that guys will leave money on the table. Right?
Yeah.
It's like you want to drive a golf cart to practice every day, then there's a price to be paid for that.
Right.
You want to have no state tax and live in 75 and sunny every day. There's a price to be paid for that.
Yeah.
And guess what? You go take that free agent deal in the Great White North if you want, but there's a price to be paid for taking that money too.
Yeah.
And you're going to pay more taxes. You might have more heat on you from media and all the rest of it. And trust me, that's a factor with a lot of guys these days.
Oh, of course.
It is.
Absolutely.
The attention, that's guys can live with it or guys that don't like it, at some point it eats at them a little bit. Even if it's 10%, they struggle with that. You know what made me think of it the other night? Watching TJ Brody.
Just down in Chicago, quietly going about his business.
Did he do 5 interviews the 5 years or 4 years he was here?
That's the thing, though. I thought he handled it very well.
He handled it
because
very
no one
well.
asked him to do anything. Because he just basically made it clear, my personality is I'm not really talking or comfortable. And
But
it's like, all right, well, I won't ask you anymore because you're not going to do it.
Yeah, he handled this market pretty well, considering it kind of went south for him the last
year went south.
Last year
for him.
it
didn't go well.
Yeah, it went very
tough
south
last season.
Yes,
but he's out there skating around.
Yeah.
And,
I think he was more of an example of a guy that just he didn't care.
Yeah.
If you want to find what people are saying about you, it's obviously much easier in Toronto than it would be in Florida or Carolina, where there's a chance no one's talking about you. Honestly, maybe no one's talking about you. Up here, you can find it, but it feels like these teams, and I'm talking the Leafs, the Raptors, the Blue Jays, they have found a way to kind of insulate their players and create a very safe environment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they talked about it endlessly. We need to make it safe for these guys. That was the big thing when Shanahan arrived in Babcock. We got to make it safe for these guys. What does that mean? I don't know, but when you think of like the role that these guys have in the city, they donate their time in certain areas. They're definitely charitable. I've always heard that. But for the most part, I don't hear anything.
No.
Like, now I'm not living on King West or in Yorkville or anything like that. So I don't know the lifestyles of all these players. And I'm not talking specifically the Leafs.
Right.
But even you look at a guy like Vladdy, where like Vladdy, I'm sure has created a lifestyle up here and a life up here where he's got people that speak Spanish.
Yeah.
He speaks Spanish with them. And he goes to the park and then does this thing. Exactly. Yeah. So is it going to be loud for Vladdy? Maybe. Is he even going to hear it? I don't know. I don't know if Vladdy's going to, he's aware of the situation, but is Vladdy going to be like, man, people are yelling at me everywhere I go in the city? I don't know if that's happening or not.
Well, I don't think it's happening with him because he's not being cast as the villain here. Everybody knows where the fingers are pointed. That's up in the management suite.
That's true.
Guys who sit in suites, Noodles, there's a good reason those guys sit in suites.
Yeah.
Wow.
They don't sit among the unwashed.
You know what? Listen, they take a lot of heat. They've always come on our show. And they
Sure.
Shapiro, Atkins, hey, Brian, like they come on. Like they've come on. They may not say a lot. They talk in, lawyer speak, technically. But they come on. And, in this particular scenario, it's going to be tough for them because it is noisy. Everywhere you go, they talk about Vladdy. What are they going to do with Vladdy? And that's not going to get quieter as the season approaches here.
One way or the other, how he plays.
Yeah.
Because, I think you go into it kind of hoping he plays well for the betterment of himself, the team, and all that. And he had a great season last year. But it could go the opposite way if he really is uncomfortable with free agency. Not every athlete loves it. Not every athlete thrives under the brightest lights when it's like you got to put up or shut up. Like Juan Soto bet on himself, and it paid off.
Yeah.
There are countless examples that don't get referenced because they just weren't high enough profile or because it went south, where guys said, I'll bet on myself, and they play poorly, and it's like, you just lost yourself $150 million.
Big bucks.
$200 million or whatever.
And the other thing was like Juan Soto, talk about feeling safe. Juan Soto was betting on himself. He had Aaron Judge hitting behind him.
Yes.
That helps. That makes you feel a little safer that you might see some pitches.
And,
I'm not like with Vladdy, protection's been an issue.
Protection has been an issue. And, I'm sure he'll have Santander, assuming hitting behind him. That's not Aaron Judge. Though.
Not quite.
No, but he's still a guy capable of hitting 40-plus home runs.
We'll see.
Jays were in action today. Max Scherzer on the mound and looked pretty good. Max is going to be an interesting story, man.
Just health, man.
Exactly what it is. Like, is he healthy? But like we're watching some video. That's 94 on the paint. Like, he's still got zip in his arm, man. Like the guy, that's an off-speed pit. Like we're doing play-by-play here, but he's a compelling storyline for the city at 40 years old. Max Scherzer.
It's a big name. And that's
as big as it gets, really.
They had a big name offseason right there. Others not so much, but that's a big name that they landed.
Yeah.
Yes, at the end or near the end of his career.
Well, he's 40. I mean, and he's had a lot of injury problems. Like, he's not going to be pitching here long term, but take advantage while you can, because who knows if he gets past the trade deadline. If they're losing, they will trade him, and he will want out. He will want to go to a winning program if he's healthy and feeling good. All right, Mike Johnson will join us from Boston tonight. Leafs Bruins on TSN. We've also got Raptors Celtics tonight. We'll get to that a little bit later this afternoon. Overdrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Big night in the NHL. Big night between Toronto and Boston. The Leafs are in Boston playing the Bruins tonight. Celtics in town playing the Raptors. We've got Mark Giordano in studio in half an hour. We look forward to that.
All right.
Catching up with Gio. He'll be in here in about a half an hour, but again, the game's on TSN 4 tonight.
Is it weird? Like, I don't know. Is it planned or is it just a coincidence? Like the Bruins and the Leafs are playing.
Oh, it's a coincidence.
But that is just weird. Like it
happened earlier in the year, actually, I believe, where they both were playing the same time.
It's a Boston-Toronto night, technically, right?
Yeah, so exactly. Like, there you go. Leafs at Bruins, Celtics at Raptors. So, yeah, we got a lot of action tonight featuring both cities. And again, the hockey game can be seen on TSN 4, and MJ's down there. He's got the call. Here's Mike Johnson, our TSN hockey analyst. What's happening, Johnny?
What's going on, fellas? Maybe the only coincidence is that when Toronto's here, Coach is available for the Raptors. I don't think that's about it, just on a scheduling-wise. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. It's funny. I'm here for the Bruins-Leaf game, And the sense is, and I think it's the wrong sense, is that the Bruins are a mess. The Bruins are out of it. They're in trouble. They're sellers. It's just, it's all coming apart. And while, yes, they are not doing as well as they have, they're still right there in the playoffs. In fact, you probably could check FanDuel. They're probably even money to make the playoffs or miss. It's not like they are 10 points out. But the feeling you have about them is that because it's so far removed from what they have been the last several years, that they're not a good team. When in fact, they're 1 point out of the playoff spot, chasing down 8 spots. So it'll be a test. I mean, it'll be intense. It's a rivalry thing. I think it absolutely is a game that gets both teams' attention. So we'll see how the Leafs do.
So with that in mind, what is your read on, Brad Marchand and his future in Boston? And if he were to become available between now and the trade deadline, what kind of market do you think would be out there for him?
So, I think Brad has made it clear he wants to stay a Bruin. He wants to extend and be a Bruin for life. He said it out loud. The question sort of becomes, does he want too much term? Maybe 2 years, maybe 3 would probably be fine with the Bruins. If he wants more than that, then maybe they explore that. Now, if he became available, Hayes, he's not the player he once was. But that doesn't mean he's not good. He still has, he got 48 points on the season. He's having an excellent offensive year. He would be a great addition with his experience. I think you saw what he could do to a locker room at the Four Nations. I think a lot of top teams around the league would be extremely interested in him as a rental. Not necessarily him extending him for 4 or 5 years, but just this year, a one-off, if he gets his mind right about not being in Boston. And that's one of the big conversations because they have 10 days to figure it out if they're going to go down this road or not. And we'll see what Don Sweeney wants to do. But if he became available, I think everyone will want him. But one thing, Hayes, I am watching tonight from Marchand is how he has sort of dug into Mitch Marner over the years, right? You remember the clip of him in the playoffs? I'm going to get you. You're going to get it. Trying to get into Mitch's kitchen a little bit. They were sort of fast friends, as all of them become on the Four Nations. They're hugging, they're cheering, they're celebrating each other. They're realizing they're nice people. They kind of like each other because that's what happens when you're around good dudes. I bet Marchand tonight is more than likely to go right back after Mitch. It's not going to be a shin tap at the face-off. It might be a slash in the stick to say, you know what? That's gone. We're back to me hating you, and I'm going to make your life miserable. I'm curious to see how that interaction plays out because I could see Marchand wanting to show to his team as much as anyone, no. I'm not friends with this guy. He's an arch enemy like he was before, and I'm going to prove it.
It's a great point, Johnny, because when you think of it, and you look at some teams have waded back into the NHL season after the Four Nations face-off. I mean, some teams, McDavid's been -3. I mean, both games, kind of out to lunch, hasn't played great, and his team as well. But, Mitch and Austin, they played, but they weren't,
They weren't great.
They weren't great, let's be honest. The team, the depth carried them and the goaltending, all of that type of stuff. At what point do you think that these players that won specifically or played that Thursday night is the grace period over? Because, you do have a playoff chase. There is seeding, all of that type of stuff. And as you mentioned, the Boston Bruins are in one. So these points are critical to them, more critical than they are to the Toronto Maple Leafs right now.
Noodles, you want to be demanding because these guys are professionals and you need them to be excellent, but you want to be understanding. Even just being around the guys and having been around that Four Nations tournament, it's different. It feels so different, and it's not even physical. It's mental and it's emotional. And it was such a high, such a level of intensity that you're plummeting back down to earth to play these games. And so I would say, physically they should be up and running by tonight or their next game. But mentally, emotionally, I'd probably give them all the way to next week. What at least have Pittsburgh on Sunday. I'm doing that game. I'll give them a Pittsburgh on Sunday. And you're right. Craig Berube's acknowledged he's trying to lighten the load. They haven't done media, trying to lighten the load. They've been Marner and Matthews been down about 2.5 minutes per game, trying to lighten the load because he realizes his guys, and I bet most guys, McDavid, like them, will probably have a little trouble sort of plugging back in and getting themselves back up to caring as much as you need to care about these games when they're coming out of the game that they cared about more.
MJ, a little bit of talk today about John Tavares and contract, which is not a topic that we've really obsessed with this season, to say the least. He is a pending free agent. He is 34 years old. What do you make of this? Hayes made the point at the top of the show that John Tavares would very much like to get a contract extension before the Maple Leafs make another run at the playoffs, because if the Maple Leafs have their traditional ending to the season, there will be a great appetite to move on from whoever has been involved in it, and John Tavares included. Like, what do you make of this? Do you sense any urgency on the team side or Tavares' side to get this thing done, or do you see free agency in the offing for Mr. Tavares?
Can I split the middle? I don't sense an urgency. I'm sure Tavares would like it, but I don't think the Leafs are urgent. But they have plenty of time to get them done before free agency starts, right? Like, unless they make the Cup final where they have a week, which would be brilliant, then they'd be happy to re-sign him probably. But if they don't make a Cup final, they'll have a month to re-sign him, to work it out. It's all going to come down to term. It's a rare spot where the Leafs need John Tavares, and they need his, what he does well. But the leverage for Toronto is that they know John wants to play in Toronto, wants to live in Toronto, wants to retire in Toronto. So you use that leverage. Now, his stats, if he gets 30 goals and 70 points this year, that's an $8 million player, even a short-term deal. That's an $8+ million player.
Whoa.
Well, fast. If you're saying a guy gets 70 points this year, any guy, and he's 28 years old, and he wants a 2-year deal for $8 million, he's not going to get it?
Yeah, he might, but I'm saying a 34-year-old guy on a team that nenever wins anything is another matter for me, but that's just me.
Yeah, but I didn't say Tavares would get that. I'm saying that's what a player would get on the open market.
Gotcha.
So Tavares can't walk into this saying, look, my stats dictate an $8 million contract, so my discount will be 7. That's not how this is going to go, unfortunately for Tavares. And they're going to say, we know you want it here. We'll give you 3 years at 4.5. And that will be way less than he could get in the open market, but he doesn't want to go to the open market. I think if he returns to Toronto, it's 4.5 or 5 or 5.5, like in that range, which, for 3 years with the cap going up as much as it is, that's your third line center. Could Tavares in situationally specific role be a good third line center for 2-3 more years? Probably can. And probably better than what they have available. But that's one more thought. Who else is coming?
Yeah.
If they get Braden Shen, then, that changes the dynamic of the need for Tavares and what he can do. If they, versus if they get Scott Laughton, well, then they still sort of need John Tavares. Like, depending on what they do in the next 10 days, that also will impact sort of how badly the Leafs need to get him back.
Yeah, and who else is available for you via free agency as well, right? Like, and who you think you can sign.
Yeah, you go Brock Nelson, same guy.
Well,
right?
Yeah,
Sam Bennett, different guy. Very different guy.
Thing is
he's not coming for $6 million.
No, he's not.
That's for darn sure.
Thing is, you know what you have in John Tavares, but also, like, sometimes you do need change just for the sake of change. Now, you have to be smart about it. And you're right. If John Tavares takes a big discount and is willing to do that, great. But sometimes you might be better suited to use that money for something else.
Sure.
And that's the biggest thing. And that's why I don't think there would be any rush for Brad Treliving or the organization to get this done now.
No, there's none.
Why would you?
It's 100% on Tavares to want this done before you drop the puck on the playoffs.
Right.
Like, it would be...
The sooner you want it, the cheaper it gets. Like,
Yes.
if you want it now, 3x4, you can have it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you should be negotiating that, Johnny. I like the way you negotiate.
I like it. Yeah, exactly. But I it's not going to happen now anyway.
You want 3x7? Take us to the conference final. We'll have a conversation.
Exactly. Let's cross that bridge once we get to it, if we're all a part of that journey.
Right.
With Mike Johnson. So Matthew Tkachuk was on the Tonight Show last night.
Mm-hmm.
And, Brady Tkachuk's been doing the media rounds as well. And, you look back on the Four Nations, it really became the coming out party in the U.S. in particular for the Tkachuks. And I think they're savvy enough to see that and maybe have this kind of premeditated attack. Like, you got to play, you got to talk, you got to be loud, you got to be very pro-American, all that kind of stuff. And I think it's clearly paid off. I mean, Matthew Tkachuk, they lost the thing. And the guy's on with Jimmy Fallon, and he's hurt.
He's on Fallon.
And he's going on the Tonight Show.
I still don't understand how his teammate, I get it. I just don't know the nature of the injury. If he's out for 2 months, I get it, which it sounds like.
Because he's not really doing anything anyway. He's not going to play.
It is a bit weird. Florida's going to be battling, and then they look up and there's Chucky, doing the media rounds.
Up in New York.
In New York.
And again, they didn't win the thing.
Right.
So it's like, you're not going to Disney because you won.
What are you celebrating? Yeah, exactly.
Right, exactly. Like it's pretty clear that this is something I can't turn down from a publicity standpoint. If I'm Matthew
You're
Tkachuk.
talking Kelsey Brothers podcast type of thing?
I would think that is definitely what they have figured out
I'm not
in the
saying
future.
Doing the Kelsey Brothers podcast, doing one for their own.
No, exactly.
Tkachuk
That's what I'm saying.
Podcast.
Like the big, because no profile got a bigger hit than the Tkachuk brothers.
No, you're right.
Like it was all about them the whole tournament.
In the moment,
seemingly anyway.
I'll tell you this, and I know them quite well, and I know Walt, their dad, like they're a great family. They were unbelievable. Like, don't get me. Like, they were unbelievable.
They played great
Saturday
when they were
night,
healthy. Were great.
They were
incredible,
unstoppable that night. They were maniacs. But we were talking about it off air, Johnny, and you and I do those Ottawa games. Ottawa needs Brady. Like,
and he said today he's not sure he's playing tomorrow.
Ottawa
night.
needs their captain back, hungry and frothing at the mouth to drag his team into the playoffs. So that's the fine line we're balancing here, because if he's not 100%, it doesn't sound like he is, they need him ASAP because they're in one. They've lost 4 in a row.
Yeah, and you also don't want to, whether practically or symbolically, him taking a victory lap for a tournament they lost. And I get it. Like, Hayes, you're right. I was down, as you know, trapped in Boston last week for the whole week. This tournament was about the Tkachuks. Their Q rating, whatever it's called, that was what got the biggest bump from this entire tournament. They might be a bigger beneficiary of the tournament than even the NHL.
Yes.
Because it really was all about them. And you're right. If Matthew Tkachuk's not playing for 2 months, then, he's got a groin hernia, whatever's going on with his leg. You can't do anything anyway. So whatever. We'll see you in 3 weeks when your rehab's going better. You kind of get it. But, this is also, it's also, what does hockey get criticized about all the time? Don't sell the stars. Don't promote the game. And there is this sort of old school, and we all share it. We all play there. We're I don't know, should he be even doing that stuff? But that's what they're doing. They are selling the game. They're trying to ride the wave and extend the window of the positive publicity for hockey, for themselves personally, for the USA version of hockey, for as long as they can. And I can't sort of hate on that. That seems like a reasonable play given the momentum of this tournament. But when guys get hurt and when guys didn't win, it does become a little bit different when you hit the talk show circuit.
Yeah, and I guess they're going on with the Kelsey brothers tomorrow, it sounds like, or they've recorded today. It'll be released tomorrow. So the two of them, Brady and Matthew Tkachuk, are going to be on with the Kelseys on their podcast. So again, they're
big platform.
Big platform. Big platform. They're doing the rounds. They're available on a lot of it, like American media.
Yeah,
which makes sense. But what I also think needs to be noted here is the reason that they became as big as they did in the States is not because they ran a cycle game or their back pressure was outstanding. It's because they fought.
Well, and they scored 4 goals in one game.
But the fighting is what got them on the radar down there. The fighting on the Saturday night.
They fought for America.
Yes, exactly. They're representing the country.
Is what rings different here. Not just that they fought, because everyone knows fighting. And, I am not a fighting guy. You know that. I've talked about it a lot. When I played, very rarely did a fight sort of get me all jacked up. I know it got some guys all fired up, but I didn't impact me that way. But we know it can happen in hockey. We know it's popular, and in that moment, in that building, was electric. So I don't know if it's warrants a referendum, how come hockey is only popular when there's a fighting incident? I think this was uniquely specific. This was not Flyers Rangers off the opening faceoff. This is Canada USA, and the backdrop of everything that's going on with Canada and the USA. And so I don't think it's an indictment of the sport that it took something like this, wearing your national team jersey, to spark that kind of interest. And you couple that with the fact that Matthew was not only fighting, but he was John Cooper was the maestro for Canada. in the pressers, right? He said all the right things. He wove and detailed. He made it, eloquent. That was Matt for the U.S.
Yes.
That was Matthew Tkachuk. That's what he was. He was the Pied Piper. Everyone was following in, and then you had Bam Bam Brady just coming in and wrecking things. And that was the 1-2 punch. So I'm not offended by and I'm not a pro fighting guy, but I'm not offended that moment in fighting, which was so unique, drew a reaction.
Oh, me neither. I think it was amazing. Don't get me wrong. I'm saying I think that what it I think needs to remind us is that there is a place for fighting in the game. If it's promoted properly, and that was a perfect storm because it was patriotism and Canada, U.S., Bell Center. Mario Lemieux was just on the ice. There were so many different things that folded into it. And yes, the two of them, performed very well. Brady in particular. Matthew got hurt, didn't play the third game, barely played the championship game. But Brady scored. But you look at the guys, again, that night, it seems like, okay, the stories were U.S. beat Canada, U.S. fought Canada, the Tkachuk brothers led the way. I think if you asked the average American who scored, they wouldn't have a clue Gensel scored too.
No.
The guys that Jake Gensel doing the rounds.
Yeah.
No one's asking for Jake Gensel.
It's not, but
or Dylan Larkin.
The
no
story
one cares.
is, though, and you're right, it is the Bam Bam brothers. It is the guys who fought. They are polarizing is the wrong word. They are a big family. They are a
bigger than life,
larger than life personalities.
Yeah.
They are what you market the game around.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what that. This was Gary Bettman must have been sitting there smiling, going, "Oh my God, this is so good for my league." The amount of people in America that did not pay attention to hockey that all of a sudden paid attention to hockey.
Yeah.
Kevin Durant tweeting about it. J.J. Watt, throughout every different sport, everyone's like, man, this is must watch. And you're right, the fights were front and center. The hockey was great. It was country versus country. There were so many things. It was a perfect storm. I think that's why these guys have had a tough time coming back to the NHL going, we got a guy passing it in my skates now. We don't,
that is very evident. Even Binnington said that to us yesterday. He's like, it's just different, man.
Yeah.
And what he's basically saying is, I can't rely on my guys the same way I could rely on, Cale Makar to, handle a breakout or whatever it is. It's just a different pace, and it's a difficult transition. Yet here we are.
You know what, Hayes? Too, one other part about this, and this is hockey is due to celebrate some guys who are willing to be not the villain, the heel, the foil.
Yes.
To be a little abrasive, not just on the ice, which we always admire. But I don't have a problem if Brandon Hagel wants to take a little shot at the Tkachuks in their group chat. I like that. Not because I like Hagel, not because I'm Canadian. I like the fact that guys are willing to show a little personality, a little jam, a little friction. Being nice all the time is quite lovely, but that doesn't get people's attention. And I think this whole thing, the seemingly real animosity between Canada and the U.S. on the ice and personality-wise, it's all healthy. And I think the league's got to lean into that. Guys, say what you feel. If you don't like the guy, say you don't like him. It's all good. And just as an aside, Dylan Larkin did in fact do multiple Sports Center hits, which is a big deal for NHL, live Sports Center hits on ESPN throughout that tournament. So, the hardcore sports people wanted to talk to Dylan Larkin because I guess they couldn't get a Tkachuk.
Yeah, exactly. Well-spoken guy. I think he went to Michigan. Detroit Red Wings. Everyone knows Detroit captain. That's we'll see what comes of Larkin in his future. But he did play well. He had a good tourney.
Yeah.
All right, Johnny. We'll leave it there. Enjoy your call tonight. Leafs Bruins on TSN.
All right. I will not leave you with the Binnington straight face.
Thank you.
That was
unnecessary,
savage,
uncalled for, and I don't like it.
Not even a smirk, not even a crinkle of a lip to let you know that I'm kidding.
Nothing.
That guy's a stone-faced killer. He's unbelievable.
Face killer, man. I need Aiden Hill at the Olympic Games. I need him in net. I need him in net. I slept on it, and I'm moving off Binnington. I'm moving off Binnington after that.
No way.
That's
never.
Fraudulent behavior.
Never. That would
behavior.
be fraudulent behavior. You're right. He's a Canadian hero, and I support him greatly. All right, Johnny.
All right, boys.
Chat soon. There's Mike Johnson joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Yeah, I had my neighbor's kids ask me this morning, walking my kids out, we're going to school, and one of them yells out, why did Jordan Binnington call you a fraud? Like, well, you got to get to school.
Yeah,
don't worry about it. Get out of here.
Well,
that's
like scram.
People got to watch the show because there were a lot of people confused on social media.
Well, that's the amazing thing because the TSN main account tweeted it out. So you're dragging in a lot of people that just aren't familiar with the inner workings of our show. Yeah. And it's like anything from, why would he do that? That's rude. That's uncalled for, to, he hates Hayes and Hayes was chirping him and that's why he dropped the mic and the hammer on him. And obviously it's an inside joke.
All right, thanks, guys. Hayes is a fraud.
Yeah, there you go. Jordan Binnington, all business, all the time.
Yeah.
Love how
that
deadpan
guy.
it was.
It was brilliant. It was a brilliant drop, man. I
Perfect.
gotta give him credit.
It really was.
All right, Mark Giordano in studio in about 10 minutes. Leafs Bruins in action tonight. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Mark Giordano coming up in studio in the next hour. The Leafs and Raptors in action tonight. Luka at home. Lakers Mavs tonight. There's some NFL news out there, too. We'll touch on that as the afternoon goes on. 48 years ago today, Slapshot came out.
Wow.
The movie Slapshot 48 years ago today.
I told you, this summer I was in a Pro-Am in New York, and my partner was Hanrahan.
No way.
Yeah, like Hanrahan.
Hanrahan, absolutely. So
Just
great,
a little
man.
guy. He was pretty funny.
Yeah,
funny guy.
There was a lot of that trending today. You can find some really good Slapshot stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll touch on that. And a report that maybe Rob Gronkowski could be looking at getting back into the NFL. Are we buying it? We'll confirm or deny it coming up at 5:30. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on the TSN app.